All right, but welcome to the show. Got a lot of stuff to go through today. So, yes, we will dive right back into the deep end of the Kanye West pool. Unfortunately, got a lot of stuff to say about that. We have updates to him going on Alex Jones and having a total mental breakdown and basically saying, I love Hitler. So we'll get into that. I'm going to lead with what happened with the Twitter files, as they're calling them now. So Matt Taibbi and Elon Musk teamed up to release all the information behind the scenes about what happened with Hunter Biden's laptop and, just the way that Twitter works in regards to censorship. So I'm going to dive into that. We're going to try to give like a fair, nuanced, objective view of what went down in the system and the results and all that stuff. So we'll dive into that. You have Ben Shapiro and Charlemagne the God saying something about Kanye that I unfortunately agree with, and it's dark. It is very, very dark. So we'll talk about that. Joe Biden is already trying to put the thumb on the scale for the 2024 primary, and I'll tell you how I would call this soft rigging. They are softly rigging the 2024 primary. We'll get into that. And then later on in the show, we have Mayor Pete gets draxed by Jake Tapper over the issue of the rail strike. So a lot of stuff to get to today. Let's go ahead and dive into it now. And by the way, as I'm kicking it off here, let me just tell you guys, I have a live show coming up on Tuesday, a live show coming up on Wednesday. Tuesday, it's in New York City at, I think, a place called the Town Hall in Manhattan. So definitely come check that out. I know it's a Tuesday. I know that's not a day people like to go out a lot, but, apparently this was the only day that they could reserve. So it is what it is, but come out and see your boy on Tuesday at Town Hall in New York City. And then also on Wednesday, I'll be in Boston. Don't do live shows often. I'm going to be with the Breaking Points crew and stuff. So it should be fun. I think there's some tickets left after our last announcement. A bunch of them sold, but I think there should be some remaining, so definitely check that out if you haven't yet. So anyway, now let's go ahead and jump into it. So, we got a drop the other night called the Twitter files. This happened like 2 or 3 days ago. And Matt Taibbi worked with Elon Musk to basically lay out everything that happened behind the scenes with the censoring of the Hunter Biden laptop story that Twitter did. This was a New York Post story that they said, we think this is hacked material, so we're going to ban this. And obviously with Elon Musk now taking over Twitter, he has access to everything that went on behind the scenes. And so he decided, let me release all of this stuff. So Taibbi actually did it in a Twitter thread here. We're going to go through it. I'm actually on the last tweet right now, so let me scroll back. We're not going to go through the whole thing. The first 5 or so tweets are basically just giving the backstory that you guys already know about just like simple Twitter stuff, the narrative that you've already heard. So here we go. In an early conception, Twitter more than lived up to its mission statement, giving people the power to create and share ideas and inform instantly without barriers. As time progressed, however, the company was slowly forced to add those barriers. Some of the first tools for controlling speech were designed to combat the likes of spam and financial fraudsters. Okay, so let me just pause there to say, I think everybody understands, even if you're the biggest free speech absolutist on the planet, you understand, hey, you want to stop financial fraudsters, right? Other things that you file under the duh category where you should have some sort of enforcement mechanism is child pornography. That should be absolutely axed. Doxing, direct threats of violence, etc. So he's explaining they created these systems, and these systems were originally for these very few things, and then it expanded. So he says, slowly over time, Twitter staff and executives began to find more and more uses for these tools. Outsiders began petitioning the company to manipulate speech as well. First a little, then more often, then constantly. By 2020, requests from connected actors to delete tweets were routine. One executive would write to another, more to review from the Biden team. The reply would come back, handled. Okay, so these links here, somebody decided, well, let's see, let's look back in the internet history and see what exactly were these things that were sent from quote-unquote the Biden team. And these links are mostly of Hunter Biden's dick. So, in these specific instances, yeah, you shouldn't be posting revenge porn. You shouldn't be, leaking nudes of people that they didn't consent to having leaked, right? I mean, that seems pretty obvious, but maybe it's not, because there's apparently a lot of disagreement, and a lot of people on the right, I feel like, are disingenuously pretending that the subject of this stuff was different. But it's not. This is all like, I'll give you more specifics later, but this is mostly like Hunter Biden's dick pics. So on that front, I'm not outraged at all. Like, I am outraged by the New York Post story being banned, the one about Hunter Biden's laptop, because, I mean, look, it was on all the nightly news outlets. They covered it. It was on all the other social media outlets. Everybody was talking about it. It was a big story. And for Twitter to ban sharing the New York Post story and even like DMing it to people, that's obviously a massive overreach. So that's something that's condemnable in and of itself. But when you get to some low-level staffer on Biden's campaign, because by the way, he wasn't president at the time, low-level staffer on Biden's campaign basically reaching out to Twitter and saying, could you please delete the president's son's dick pics? That doesn't outrage me because I don't think those pics should have been posted in the first place. I always told you guys, when you look at the Hunter Biden scandals, you have to separate stuff out, because all the things involving like business transactions and corruption and bribery, that's all fair game, and everybody should be, looking into that. That should be investigated. He should serve jail time over that stuff. But the sexual stuff and the addiction stuff, that's none of our fucking business, man. And to leak his dick pics without his consent, I mean, that's gross, and I think it's fair to call that revenge porn, and that should be, I have no problem with that being pulled down, even though I'm a free speech absolutist. Okay, so let's continue. Celebrities and unknown allies could be removed or reviewed at the behest of a political party. Both parties had access to these tools. For instance, in 2020, requests from both the Trump White House and the Biden campaign were received and honored. Okay, so again, the stuff that the Biden campaign said, hey, can you remove this? It was like Hunter Biden's dick. Now we learn, hey, the Trump White House was also saying, could you remove this? Could you remove that? And that was honored by Twitter. Now, hold on. I'd like to see some specifics on that too, please. Because, look, if it's revenge porn pictures of Don Jr.'s dick, then I'll defend the Trump campaign and say they have every right to say you should pull that down. But if it's like things that just make Trump look bad, and he wants it pulled because he doesn't believe in free speech and a free press, well, then I'll condemn it. So, looks like Taibbi and Elon Musk have information about not just the Trump campaign, the Trump White House. The Trump White House saying, pull this down, and they did it. So, I'd like to know the specifics of that. This is just sort of glossed over in a weird way. Okay, more. This system wasn't balanced. It was based on contacts, because Twitter was and is overwhelmingly staffed by people of one political orientation. There were more channels, more ways to complain, open to the left, and then he says, well, Democrats, than the right. I'm not surprised by that at all, by the way. And I guess he has some numbers here which show just how pervasive it was from the Democratic side asking for removal of stuff versus the Republican side. The resulting slant in content moderation decisions is visible in the documents you're about to read. However, it's also the assessment of multiple current and former high-level executives. Okay, there was more throat clearing about the process, but screw it, let's jump forward. See, I don't know, he goes from number 12 here, you could see, and then nothing, and then number 16. I guess he took some stuff out, I don't know. The Twitter Files, Part 1, How and Why Twitter Blocked the Hunter Biden Laptop Story. On October 14th, 2020, the New York Post published Biden's secret emails, an expose based on the contents of Hunter Biden's abandoned laptop. Twitter took extraordinary steps to suppress the story, removing links and posting warnings that it may be unsafe. They even blocked its transmission via direct message, a tool hitherto reserved for extreme cases like child pornography. White House spokeswoman Kayleigh McEnany was locked out of her account for tweeting about the story, prompting a furious letter from Trump campaign staffer Mike Hahn, who seethed, at least pretend to care for the next 20 days. This led policy executive Carolyn Strom to send out a polite what the fuck query. Several employees noted that there was tension between the comms and policy teams, who had little less control over moderation than the safety and trust teams. So this is interesting. There was a disagreement between the comms and the policy people versus the safety and trust people. The safety and trust people were more ban happy, and the comms and policy team were not. Okay, So they were fighting behind the scenes. That's interesting. Strom's note returned the answer that the laptop story had been removed for violations of the company's hacked materials policy. Now remember, this was at the time they were going, oh, yeah, this is like Russian disinformation. Well, come to find out that wasn't true at all. That was totally made up. That's fake. The laptop was real. The story is real as to how it came about. And so they were wrong to do that. We'll get to more on that in a minute because eventually Jack Dorsey, the guy at the top of the company, the CEO, steps in and tries to have it reversed, and it's a long process, but he gets it reversed. Anyway, although several sources recalled hearing about a general warning from federal law enforcement that summer about possible foreign hacks, there's no evidence that I've seen of any government involvement in the laptop story. In fact, that might have been the problem. Okay, so hold on here. Hold on. So the stuff that he has given to this point and said, this is what the Biden campaign said, hey, could you please have these things removed? That was all Hunter dick pics, which I get, that's fair, right? But here he's saying, the government wasn't involved in the laptop story. So he found no evidence of any communication between the Biden people and Twitter over the laptop. So the Biden campaign wasn't prodding Twitter like, hey, you got to ban this. This is Russian disinformation. It was some people within Twitter took it upon themselves to do it. And again, we're going to get to more on it, but it's like there's this woman who had a high-level position by the name of Vijaya Gadde, or Gadde, I don't know how you say her name. And she seemed to be the one who was really steering the ship, and there was no pressure on her over this story. She did it on her own. Well, look, I think that's kind of a bombshell, but in the opposite direction than the right thinks it is. Because I was under the impression, I assumed, well, of course you had probably Democratic officials behind the scenes like, you got to ban this isn't right. But that didn't actually happen. So that's good. That's a good thing. It's bad that they censored the story, but it's good that there were no Democratic politicians and the Biden campaign themselves weren't like, hey, can you please get rid of this? Wow. The decision was made at the highest levels of the company, but without the knowledge of CEO Jack Dorsey, with former head of legal policy and trust Vijaya Gadde, there she is, playing a key role. Okay, so it looks like Jack Dorsey was sort of an absentee owner. He was like drinking kombucha and doing yoga on the top of a mountain in Nepal or some shit. He was never really there, didn't really care. Was growing his long beard and doing like multi-day fasts and shit, trying to hang out with celebrities and whatnot. He never supported them doing this. And when he found out that they did it, of course, he was like, okay, reverse this. They just freelanced it, is how one former employee characterized the decision. Hacking was the excuse, but within a few hours, pretty much everyone realized that wasn't going to hold, but no one had the guts to reverse it. Wow. You can see the confusion in the following lengthy exchange, which ends up including Gadde and former Trust and Safety Chief Yoel Roth. Comms official Trenton Kennedy writes, I'm struggling to understand the policy basis for marking this as unsafe. So again, debate within the company. Interesting. By this point, everyone knew this was fucked, said one former employee, but the response was essentially to err on the side of continuing to err. Interesting. Former VP of Global Comms, Brandon Borman, asked, can we truthfully claim that this is part of the policy? In other words, what the fuck are you doing here, Vijaya? What are you doing? To which former Deputy General Counsel Jim Baker again seems to advise staying the non-course because caution is warranted. A fundamental problem with tech companies and content moderation, many people in charge of speech know or care little about speech and have to be told the basics by outsiders. In one humorous exchange on day one, Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna reaches out to Gadde to gently suggest that she hop on the phone to talk about the backlash regarding speech. Khanna was the only Democratic official I could find in the files who expressed concern. Gadde replies quickly, immediately diving into the weeds of Twitter policy, unaware Khanna is more worried about the Bill of Rights. Khanna tries to reroute the conversation to the First Amendment, mention of which is generally hard to find in the files. So, in other words, Ro Khanna reaches out and goes, hey, you mind if we talk about how you came to this decision to ban this, like, news story? And Vijay Gadde's like, oh no, look, we're on top of it, we're all over it here, the specifics as to, how we made the decision, what our safety policy is, etc. And Ro Khanna's like, I'm concerned from the other direction, like, I'm concerned that this is a violation of the spirit of the First Amendment and the Bill of Rights. Because, any sort of government pressure of a private company to censor information at their behest is bad and wrong. So it looks like he assumed the government was involved too. Again, they weren't, or the Biden campaign wasn't involved. There were no government officials involved. They took it upon themselves to ban this. So it's good that there was no government involvement, but they still made the wrong decision. They shouldn't have banned it in the first place. It was obviously a very legit news story, and it was everywhere. Within a day, head of public policy Lauren Culbertson receives a ghastly letter/report from Carl Szabo of the research firm Netroots, which had already polled 12 members of Congress, 9 R's and 3 Democrats, from the House Judiciary Committee to Representative Judy Chu's office. Netroots lets Twitter know a bloodbath awaits in upcoming Hill hearings, with members saying it's a tipping point, complaining tech has grown so big that they can't even regulate themselves, so governments may need to intervene. Szabo reports to Twitter that some Hill figures are characterizing the laptop story as tech's access Hollywood moment. That's when Trump said grab by the pussy. Apparently they said it's like that level of a scandal. Twitter files continued. The First Amendment isn't absolute. Szabo's letter contains chilling passages relaying Democratic lawmakers' attitude. They want more moderation, and as for the Bill of Rights, it's not absolute. An amazing subplot of the Twitter Hunter Biden laptop affair was how much was done without the knowledge of CEO Jack Dorsey, and how long it took for the situation to get unfucked, as one ex-employee put it, even after Dorsey jumped in. Okay, so look, the big parts of this story are the specific things the Biden campaign reached out and said, hey, can you do something about this? Those things were like revenge porn pictures of Hunter. So I think that's totally legitimate, because I don't think revenge porn is literally illegal in many states, as it should be, because that's not right. You could be a free speech absolutist and say, I'm still against revenge porn, right? That's not that difficult to do. So that's a big bombshell. The other big bombshell is the Trump White House was asking Twitter to remove things, and they were doing it. Okay, that's a violation of the First Amendment. And outside of that, Twitter acted alone to ban this Hunter Biden laptop story, which again, it's the wrong decision. It's a bad decision. They shouldn't have that power, but it does, destroy this notion that it was Democratic officials who were prodding them to do it, and then they did it. I'm sure they prodded in other ways, which they shouldn't do, right? But on this front, that's not what happened. So it's almost like a reverse bombshell. It's a bombshell in the opposite direction than they think it is. So here's a good tweet. Summary of thread. Twitter moderation and legal team made decision without Jack Dorsey's knowledge. Biden team didn't request anything regarding the story. Liberals donate to Democrats and both sides ask for content removal. Oh, and Hunter has a 9+ inch cock. All right, more. So we see here. Yeah, literally the tweets they were asked to delete. So when the Biden campaign reached out to Twitter and said, hey, could you delete these tweets? The tweets that they were asked to delete were deleted under the hacked material policy. They literally contain Hunter Biden's cock, a sex worker, and drugs being posted without consent. This isn't anything we didn't already know. Dude isn't even on drugs anymore. So this is some of the stuff that the Biden campaign was like, hey, could you remove this? I'm not going to click these pictures, but a lot of it is just Hunter and sex acts and drugs. And so the revenge porn aspect of this, that shouldn't be up. That shouldn't be up. And then we get this. Matt Binder says, congrats to Jack Dorsey, who went from texting his friend Elon Musk to buying his company Twitter to being doxxed by his friend Elon Musk, the new owner of Twitter, and being harassed for the rest of his life by QAnon because he has the word pizza in his email address. So this is crazy, but one of the emails that Taibbi tweeted as part of the thread has Jack Dorsey's actual email name in there. They didn't redact it. And it's like jack@pizzasomething.com, right? And so now QAnon people are like going all in saying Jack Dorsey's a pedophile and he's with the deep state or whatever. And I mean, it's stupid for so many reasons, but the most straightforward reason is Jack Dorsey all along was not on the side of censoring the Hunter Biden laptop story. He was always on the side of it should have been allowed up. They should have never taken it down. And he helped reverse it when the time came. When the bad decision happened, he helped get in there and reverse it. Now, he was an absentee owner, so perhaps it took too long, and he should have been more involved in the day-to-day, etc. But he was always on the side that conservatives would like, and they're just like overlooking that because pizza is in his email name, so they think he's now like a sex pest and a pedophile and all these things. So there's going to be more stuff coming out on this story. Obviously, we'll follow it as it comes out. But again, the most important points are The Trump campaign was asking, not campaign, excuse me, the Trump White House was asking for content to be removed. I'd like to know what the content was, because that's actually super fucking important. Because that could actually violate the First Amendment. So, it depends on what they were asking to be removed, right? Again, if it was a picture of Don Jr.'s dick, then it's like, okay, they have every right to ask about that. But if it's like just criticism he doesn't like or whatever, okay, then get the fuck over it, right? So the Trump team asked to have stuff removed. That's crazy. And then the specific stuff that the Biden campaign asked to have taken down is just revenge porn pics of Hunter, which I get, that's fair. And, you know, Biden wasn't involved and Democratic officials weren't involved in the Hunter Biden story. They weren't involved in saying, hey, remove that. Twitter did it on their own. And by the way, again, they shouldn't have. Vijaya God, you know, she was terrible at this job and very censorious, and she wrapped it in, you know, she twisted herself into an intellectual pretzel to say why it's the right thing to do the things that she does. And she was wrong about all of it. But it wasn't from Democratic politicians. And so those are all bombshells, just not in the way that conservatives think they are. It's actually in the opposite direction. Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.